The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has taken a new turn with the recent advances of the Russian army along the entire line of contact. In recent days, even pro-government Ukrainian sources have begun to acknowledge the progress of Russian forces on the battlefield. Among these advances, the capture of several strategic locations stands out, bringing Russia closer to its military objectives in the region. The war, which has entered a phase of intensified fighting, has forced both sides to adapt their strategies. While Ukrainian troops seek to halt the enemy advance with the use of urban defenses and positional warfare, the Russian army has demonstrated a growing capacity to penetrate defensive lines and consolidate territories under its control. Intelligence reports indicate that Moscow has redoubled its logistical and strategic efforts to ensure the success of this offensive. On February 9th, Russian troops managed to take control of the settlement of Orakovo-Vasilevka, located northwest of the city of Artemovsk. This strategic move has been closely monitored by international observers. This advance is considered significant by military analysts, as it poses a direct threat to Ukrainian defensive positions in the region. The capture of Orakovo-Vasilevka could potentially shift the balance of power in this contested area. According to reports from war correspondents such as Andrei Rudenko and Vladlen, the capture of this town could be the prelude to a broader offensive towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. These cities are crucial for controlling the Eastern Front. That same day, the Russian army also secured control of the settlement of Uspenskoye in the direction of Pokrovsk. This dual success has bolstered their strategic positioning. This action was led by units from the troop groups called Center, further consolidating the Russian presence in the area and bringing their forces closer to the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. The consolidation of these positions is seen as a critical step in their campaign. Reports from the ground indicate that residents of border settlements in this region have begun to hear Russian artillery fire more clearly, suggesting the possibility of future clashes in their territory. The increasing intensity of these sounds has caused concern among the local population. Additionally, Russian troops have increased their pressure on several strategic fronts, using hybrid warfare tactics and combined attacks with heavy artillery and reconnaissance drones. These tactics have proven effective in disrupting Ukrainian defenses. Military sources indicate that Russia's growing air superiority has been key to these successes, enabling precision strikes on fortified positions of the Ukrainian army. This air dominance has provided a significant advantage in their operations. Satellite images have shown significant buildups of Russian military equipment in the eastern regions, suggesting preparation for a large-scale offensive. The scale of these preparations indicates a potentially prolonged and intense conflict ahead. Russian President Vladimir Putin has capitalized on these recent military advances to issue a stern ultimatum to the West: accept the stringent conditions imposed by Moscow or face a significant expansion of the Russian offensive all the way to the Polish border. According to various sources within the Kremlin, Putin and former U.S. President Donald Trump have held multiple communications in which the Russian leader has made it abundantly clear that he is not willing to make any concessions. Among the conditions set by Putin for the resolution of the ongoing conflict are the immediate holding of presidential elections in Ukraine, international recognition of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions as integral parts of the Russian Federation, as well as a permanent ban on Ukraine's entry into NATO and the complete cessation of arms supplies to Kiev. Surprisingly, following one of these high-stakes conversations between Putin and Trump, U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine Keith Kellogg suggested that Ukraine should indeed hold presidential elections, which could be interpreted as a subtle sign that Washington is considering giving in to some of Moscow's stringent demands. This stance reflects the growing recognition that prolonging the conflict could become unsustainable for the West and its allies both economically and politically. The political impact of these unfolding events extends far beyond the borders of Ukraine. The European Union has begun to show internal divisions over the continuation of military support for Kiev, with some countries advocating for a negotiated solution to the conflict and others maintaining an uncompromising stance. This lack of consensus could significantly affect Ukraine's ability to receive crucial arms assistance in the future, further weakening its already precarious position in the ongoing conflict. Russia's strategy and the future of the conflict. Putin is acutely aware that time is on Russia's side, and he is playing a long game. Every day that passes without an agreement means more loss of territory for Ukraine and a progressive depletion of its military forces, making it increasingly difficult for Ukraine to mount a successful defense. The Kremlin also seems to have learned from previous experiences that any agreement with the West can be revoked in the future, which has made them more cautious and determined in their current approach. This reinforces its determination to carry out its special military operation to its ultimate consequences, regardless of the cost. Historically, Moscow has sought to maintain a stable relationship with the West, often engaging in complex diplomatic maneuvers. However, NATO's eastward expansion, particularly its intention to integrate Ukraine, was the trigger for the current confrontation, escalating tensions to unprecedented levels. From the Kremlin's perspective, a Ukraine aligned with the West represents an existential threat to Russian national security, a red line that cannot be crossed. That is why, beyond the occupation of territories, Moscow seeks to install a pro-Russian government in Kiev, ensuring long-term influence, thus ensuring that Ukraine is not used in the future as an instrument to weaken Russia's strategic position in Eastern Europe, a region of critical importance. The Putin administration believes that only under leadership aligned with its interests can long-term stability in the region be guaranteed, a belief that drives their current actions. The consequences of the conflict also extend to the global economy, affecting markets and trade routes worldwide. Sanctions imposed by the West have had a significant impact on the Russian economy, leading to a decline in the value of the ruble and shortages in stores. But at the same time, they have encouraged the creation of new trade routes with countries such as China, India, and Iran, fostering new economic partnerships. Russia has diversified its energy markets and found new buyers for its oil and gas, ensuring a steady flow of revenue. This has allowed it to mitigate the effects of international restrictions, showcasing the resilience and adaptability of its economy in the face of adversity. Conclusion. The situation in Ukraine continues to evolve rapidly, with the Russian army advancing on multiple fronts and consolidating its control over key territories. Moscow's strategy seems designed to maximize pressure on Kiev and its Western allies, forcing them to accept terms favorable to Russia. As the conflict continues, the possibility of a negotiated solution will depend on the willingness of the parties involved to make concessions. However, given the current course of events, it seems unlikely that Russia will stop its offensive without first achieving its strategic objectives. The future of the war remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. The conflict has transformed the balance of power in Eastern Europe and will continue to have far-reaching geopolitical repercussions. The international community faces the challenge of finding a solution that not only ends the fighting, but also establishes a lasting peace in the region.